by popular demand, thanks to the wonderful trade by one Peter Chiarelli today, let's do it. Let's do it. You guys asked for it. You got it. It's somewhat unfair when talking about Chiarelli to judge his Edmonton tenure right now, but we'll attempt it. We got to go back to his Bruins history though, first and foremost. So this will be fun. This will be fun because again, you can't really judge the Edmonton tenure that well. He's still, he's still fresh into that tenure. I mean, sure, it's been an outright disaster for him, but it's a bit unfair to judge him. But of course, these are the two most recent trades. We know them, and they're both horrible. So, for those of you keeping track at home, those are losses until further notice. Just L's, outright L's. The end. There's nothing else you have to do. And, despite the fact that the Bruins' history starts off relatively well, this is probably going to be painful towards the end of it. So let's do this, shall we? We'll talk about Chiarelli's history as Bruins GM and his short history, but long history as Oilers GM, because he's terrible. So there is that. Right. God, there's only 4 pages this time as opposed to Lou Lamoriello where there was 18,000 pages, so we got that going for us. First trade, getting Stan Chistoff. I mean, that's a draw because who the hell cares? Getting Sauve for Redenbach, that's a draw. Who cares? Future considerations for Wade Brookbank, that is a draw. Who cares? All irrelevant deals. We'll get into the real meat and potatoes of it in a moment, though. Trading Jan Stastny to the Blues, that's a nothing deal. This is an interesting one. Flipping Milan Justina to the Caps for the pick that eventually became TJ Brodie, but of course that deal is immediately flipped. Flipped. It was flipped and flipped. The pick was flipped to the Calgary Flames, just a few spots ahead. The first big deal that we can consider not a draw would be flipping Chris Versteeg. That's right, for those of you who didn't know, Versteeg was a Bruins pick. Flipping Chris Versteeg to the Blackhawks, where he would win a cup 3 years later, for Brandon Bochenski. That's a loss. So for those keeping track at home, no wins thus far. Although, this right here is a win. Damn it. Way to go, Petey. You finally got a win. It honestly came a little bit quicker than I thought it would. Andrew Ferentz and Chuck Kobasu for Wayne Primo, Brad Stewart, and a pick that became TJ Brodie. Is TJ Brodie the best player in that deal? At a point, probably. Brad Stewart was solid. Wayne Primo was solid. If anything, this is a win. Not just because they get piece of the cup-winning defense, Andrew Ferentz, but you get rid of the two guys that, aside from Marco Sturm, remind you of the Joe Thornton trade just a few seasons prior. So, yeah, that's a big win. Petey helped us forget, kind of, at least not have to look at the guys every game that were traded for Joe Thornton. So that's a win. Aaron Ward for Paul Mara. Ward was not on the cup-winning team, so that's kind of a wash. I'll call that a draw. Dennis Weidman for Brad Boys. With Dennis Weidman, he was off the team by the time they won the cup. He was dealt. He ended up on Florida and Washington in that same year. Of course, this was before he ended a referee's career. Brad Boys didn't do much in St. Louis, so I'm going to call that a draw as well. I feel like that's fair. Probably. Adam McQuaid for the pick that became Jamie Benn. This is a win for the Bruins. Why? Adam McQuaid on the cup-winning team. Jamie Benn, obviously, did not stay in Columbus. So you can't say, the Bruins gave up the pick that became Jamie Benn. No, the Blue Jackets did. Also, World Junior update, Kazakhstan just scored against Slovakia. Good stuff. But yeah, that's a win. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, it's Jamie Benn. No, it's a win for the Bruins. This trade, I don't know who that guy is. His last name sounds like a medication. That is a draw. Tommy Cross for Bill Sweat and Maxime Tanguay. That is a draw, even though Tommy Cross is the best player in that trade. They get Manny Fernandez, one of the most underrated goalies in NHL history, for Peter Kalus. It's a draw, but Manny Fernandez, he didn't do much in Boston. I wish he did, but he didn't do much. 32 games. So there's that. Peter Schaefer for Sean Donovan. That is another draw. Two players of an equal caliber. So what do we have? One win thus far? Petey, you got to step it up. Carl Soderberg, who in fairness did not join this team until after they won the Cup in 2011. He was a part of the team. Actually, no, he wasn't even a part of the team that went to the Cup final and lost to Chicago. He came afterwards. So, I mean, it's a win. I love Mihanu Toivonen, current Maine Mariner. But, yeah, that's a win for the Bruins because they at least got someone useful, but it's not like a major win. Petri Nokalainen for Ben Walter and the pick that became Kevin Lynch. That's a draw. God, Petey, you are... I mean, Nokalainen wasn't even here for that long. Ben Walter didn't do much for the Islanders either, but yeah, that's a draw. Maybe a win if you want to consider it that. Nathan Saunders and Brett Skinner, two guys I have never heard of. For Mark Mowers, who I have heard of, that's a draw. Anaheim, you could consider getting the win because they get the best player, but both players were everyone involved didn't do much. Alex Auld for Nate DeCasimiro and Jeff Costello. You could consider it a win for the Bruins, although Auld only played 23 games. I'd consider it a draw because it's an irrelevant trade in hindsight. Bruins get Shane Knighty and Nicholas Tremblay for Bochenski. Shane Knighty was a member of the team that went to the Cup final. Granted, he was depth, but he was a part of that team, damn it. Shane Knighty, love him. That's a win for the Bruins, but a very minor win indeed. Matt Marquardt and Jonathan Sigalet, it's a draw, obviously. Jamie Arneal for Stephen Delisle and Brent Regner. It's a draw, obviously. And here is our first true, undisputed victory. Johnny Boychuk from Matt Hendricks. Need I say more? That's a major W. Round of applause. Golf claps all around for Peter Chiarelli. That's a win, damn it. And then Martin St. Pierre for Pascal Pelletier. That's another draw. God, there's so many. Trust me, I lived this, and I'm having to relive this now. So many minor, inconsequential trades in his tenure at a certain point. Ned Lukasevich, who I'm convinced is not a real person, and the pick that became Lane McDermott for Andrew Alberts. It's a draw. Alberts is the best player in the deal. He only played one season in Philly, so you could consider it a win for Philly, but it's an irrelevant trade in hindsight, so no. This is another major victory. Fun fact, this is the second time that Peter Chiarelli has traded for Alex Petrovich. Mark Arecki and the pick that became Petrovich for Martin Carsons and Matt Lashoff. Now, I love me some Matt Lashoff. That is incredible, by the way. Yeah, second round, 36 overall. That's incredible. I love me some Matt Lashoff, but come on, that's another major win for Mr. Chiarelli. Because, obviously, what Mark Recchi did for the Bruins, including winning a cup in his final career NHL game, he was a monster. So that's a major victory. Steve Monador for Petri Nokalainen. R.I.P. Steve Monador. He didn't do much for the Bruins, though. He played 13 games, so that is a draw. Patrick Eaves and the pick that became Craig Cunningham for Aaron Ward. Again, minor deal. Eaves never played a game for the Bruins. So, yeah. Aaron Ward, in fairness, stuck around in Carolina for a little bit. Well, actually, that was his return to Carolina. He played 60 games. So, another draw. And then we have the Phil Kessel trade. So here's the thing. Toronto didn't do anything with Phil Kessel. Pieces that they got back from Pittsburgh for Phil Kessel might be a part of a very important core in the next few years. But considering the Bruins won a cup with Seguin and Dougie Hamilton, you got to give it to the Bruins, even though we all know what happened afterwards when those two players were dealt. But we don't have to talk about that right now. That's a win for the Bruins. Craig Weller and the pick that became Alex Kokochev and the rights to Alex Falstrom. That's a nothing trade. Chuck Kobasu played 2 seasons in Minnesota. If you want, you can give the win to Minnesota for getting Kobasu, but not a major impactful deal for either side. This, on the other hand, was Kevin Sundher and a pick that never came to fruition for Danny Paille who of course was a member of the Cup-winning team, breaks his leg. Well, actually, in fairness, Gregor Campbell broke his legs down now. Danny Paille, though, still great. I was thinking of injury. Danny Paille's career, unfortunately, is kind of over, thanks to a cheap shot over in Sweden. But, yeah, Danny Paille, solid fourth liner. That's a win for the Bruins. And Peter Chiarelli. Wild for Marquardt, nothing deal. The rights to Steven Kampfer for Justin Shugg. I mean, the Bruins win that one, but let's be honest, we'll call it a draw. Dennis Seidenberg and the rights to Matt Bartkowski for Byron Bitts, Craig Weller, and Alex Petrovich. It's obviously a big win for the Bruins. Dennis Seidenberg, a key member of the Cup-winning team in 2011. Bartkowski was okay, and Petrovich today was traded for a third-round pick. Oh, my God. Yeah, it's a big one for the Bruins. The pick that became Anthony Kamara for Derek Morris, it's kind of a nothing trade. Derek Morris, the best player on that, or in that trade, stayed in Phoenix for a while, was a part of the team that went to the conference final as well in 2011-2012. That's a win for the Coyotes. That's a win for it. It's not a major win, but still, Derek Morris was on the team that made it to the conference final. And then we get to the Campbell and Horton trade. Yeah, I think we all know how this one's going to be judged. That's a big win. It's a big goddamn victory. The pick that became Zach Trotman for Johan Matson, I mean, it's a win for the Bruins, but barely, just because Trotman actually played the NHL. You could call it a draw if you want to. I'd label that a slight win. David Warsofsky for Vladimir Sobotka. I mean, it's got to be a win for the Blues. Warsofsky isn't terrible, but yeah, Blues got the best player in that. We'll give that to them. Colby Cohen for Matt Hunwick. Colorado wins that deal. Sean Zimmerman for Jordan Nackstead and Jeff Lavecchio. Two names I haven't heard in a long time. That is a draw. Uri Simic and Levi Nelson. That is a draw. Marco Sturm for nothing at the end of Marco Sturm's career. That is a draw. Again, there's a lot of trades like that. Chris Kelly for Shane Prince. Big win for the Bruins. Rich Peverly and Boris Valabik for Mark Stewart and Blake Wheeler. It's a win for the Bruins because Rich Peverly was a part of a cup-winning team. Blake Wheeler is one of the best players in the NHL, but the Bruins won this trade. What would the Bruins look like if they still had Blake Wheeler? Who the hell knows? I dream about it often, but that is a win for the Bruins because they won the Cup. If they didn't win the Cup, I would fly to Edmonton right now and do what every Oilers fan wants to do, and that's shake Chiarelli's hand for ruining my team. We go down to the bottom page here. First page of the bottom page. Oh boy, this is a fun one. Joe Colborne, the pick that became Ricard Raquel, that of course they flipped to Anaheim, and a conditional pick, which never came to fruition, for Thomas Kaberle. That is a win for the Bruins. Kaberle won a cup in Boston, not in Toronto. That still pisses a lot of people off. I understand why. But, yeah, I mean, it was basically Colborne. I don't quite... Actually, in fairness, it was Joffrey Lupul in return for Raquel, I do believe. It's a big win for the Bruins, even though Kaberle wasn't that great when the Bruins won the Cup. Stefan Chaput, David Liberté, and, yeah, I mean, it's a nothing deal. Brian McGrattan's probably the best player in that trade. That says something, I think. They get Anton Khudobin for Jeff Penner and Mikko Lehtinen. That's a win for the Bruins. Joe Corvo for a fourth-round pick. Corvo wasn't great in Boston, but without double-checking what that pick became, God damn it, but I have to. All right, hold on. 2012 NHL Draft. Oh, look at that. We've opened this page so many times, it's an autofill at this point. It was a second-round pick, wasn't it? Fourth-round pick. Cool. Carolina, who did you get for that? Trevor Carrick. Yeah, that's a draw. Brian Ralston and Mike Motto for Yannick Riendo and Mark Canteen. That is a win because it involves Brian Ralston, and I will not accept criticism otherwise. Craig Zanon for Steven Kampfer. That's a draw. Yuri Alexandrov for nothing. That's a draw. Alexandrov never really did anything. Chris Bourque for Zach Hamill. It's a draw. I love me some Chris Bourque, and Zach Hamill is one of the biggest first-round busts in a long time. But, yeah, it's a draw. Michel Oulet and Seth Griffith for Benoit Pouliot. That's a win for Tampa. They got the best player in the deal. Tim Thomas to the Islanders for a conditional second-round pick. I don't even remember what that pick became. It doesn't matter. That's a win because Tim Thomas already had one foot in the bomb shelter at that point. They acquire Jaromir Jagr for Cody Payne, Lane McDermott, and a conditional second. I have to see what that conditional second was at the very least. Obviously, the Bruins went to the Cup final with Jagr. They didn't win. Thanks, Chicago. You robbed Jagr of another cup. You feel good about it? You shouldn't. You shouldn't. God damn it. Let's see. That pick. I guess the Bruins kept it? Wait, was it conditional second? Did it end up being a third? Damn it, Jagr. We're going to Hockey DB. We'll look it up this way. Jaromir Jagr. Show trades. Jason Dickinson, who's not terrible, but that's still a win for the Bruins. Max Sauve for Rob Flick, nothing trade. Wade Redden for a seventh, nothing trade. Sorry, Wade. Okay, here come the happy fun times. Louis Eriksson, Joe Morrow, Riley Smith, Matt Frazier for Tyler Seguin, Rich Peverly, and Ryan Button. Yeah, this not. Ah, God, brings a tear to my eye to this day. Yeah, that's a win for Dallas, barely. Blake Partlet for Carter Camper. That's a draw. Andre Mazzaros for a third. It doesn't matter who that pick became. That's a win for Philadelphia because Mazzaros didn't really do a whole hell of a lot in Boston. I can tell you that much. Please tell me that didn't become somebody good. Mark Friedman. Okay, who's an AHLer right now. It's a draw because of that. They traded Johnny Boychuk for 2 seconds and a third. So here's the deal. I hate that trade because Johnny Boychuk is the defenseman that they should have kept over Dennis Seidenberg. That said, the Boychuk contract is a little bit rough right now. The picks became Brandon Carlo and Ryan Lindgren. It's a win for the Bruins. I mean, again, they shouldn't have gotten rid of Boychuk when they did, but they did get Brandon Carlo back, and they kind of dodged a bullet. Boychuk's contract's not looking that great right now, so that's a win for the Bruins. Although at the time it wasn't. Jared Knight for Zach Phillips, nothing trade. Jordan Caron in the 6th for Max Talbot and Paul Carey, nothing trade. Brett Connolly for 2 seconds. This trade still haunts my goddamn dreams. I don't like it at all. He goes on to win a cup in Washington. Picks became Matt Spencer and Boris Tkachuk. Oh my god. Matt Spencer's in the ECHL right now. Boris Tkachuk's looking very promising. And then, of course, he leaves in free agency and wins a cup with Washington. That's a win for Tampa. And that was Peter Chiarelli's last trade in Boston. Thank God. Because you see how rough it got towards the end. That said, there were some wins there, right? There were some wins. A lot of nothing trades, but there were some wins. Some big wins, in fact. But everybody knows with Peter Chiarelli that he always tried to build teams the same way. Defense first, get some toughness and some grit in there. And that, of course, is kind of the way he's still looking to build the old Edmonton Oilers by, acquiring Alex Petrovich for Chris Weidman and a third, which is just a joke, and trading Drake Caggiula for Brandon Manning. Absolute idiot. But let's take a look at his entire oh my god, the Griffin Reinhart trade was his first trade. Okay, hold on. So his first trade in Boston was a nothing deal. Like, his first few trades in Boston were nothing deals. He didn't have a loss until the Versteeg trade, right? And then he counterbalanced it by acquiring Andrew Ferentz. In Edmonton, immediately trades Griffin Reinhart for a first and a second. Need I remind you who those picks became? Not that it matters. Matt Barzal and Mitch Stevens. In fairness, Mitch Stevens is now with Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. Indeed he is. What was that deal? Jesus Christ. Anthony Cirelli and Mitch Stevens for Anthony Beauvillier. That's a hell of a trade. But, yeah. Griffin, buddy, don't worry. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Oh my God. So, you know, when people are like, man, wouldn't you be so much happier if the Bruins took Matt Barzal when they had the chance? Sure. But I don't feel as bad as Oilers fans feel about the Griffin Reinhart trade. Holy shit. They got Cam Talbot in a 7th for a 2nd and a 3rd. So basically Talbot for a 2nd and a 3rd. I don't remember who those picks became. Let's take a look. Well, I mean, the pick eventually became Siegenthaler. So obviously there was another deal. That's a win for the Oilers. I can close the Bruins page now. That's a win for the Oilers. I mean, you can't judge it on the fact like, oh, that became Siegenthaler. Even then, it's still a win for the Oilers. Marty Marincin and Brad Ross. They flip to... Wait, what? That's right. Brad Ross was drafted by Toronto, ended up in Edmonton, and then flipped back to Toronto for a 4th-round pick. I don't know who that 4th-round pick became. It's going to be tough for this trade to not be deemed a loss, I would say. Marincin, that 4th-round pick became Christian Wolanin eventually, so it was flipped to Ottawa at some point. That's a draw. Travis Iwanek and a 4th for Eric Gryba. Gryba's the best player in the deal, but I have to know who that 4th-round pick became. I have to. I just have to. It's going to be someone good, isn't it? Oh, Christian Wolanin. Oh, so there's the deal then. So that's a draw because I'd probably take Christian Wolanin over Eric Gryba right now. So, yeah, we'll call that a draw. Laurie Korpikoski for Boyd Gordon. I mean, it's a draw. It's kind of a nothing deal. Korpikoski. Don't be broken. It might be broken now. Okay, well, we'll keep that in mind. Korpikoski, Gordon, yeah, that's a draw. Anders Nilsson for Liam Coughlin. That's a win for the Oilers. They at least got an NHLer out of the deal. Although Nilsson, still not in Edmonton now, so you got that going for you. Zach Kassian for Ben Scrivens. I'll call it a win for Edmonton. Yeah, I'll call it a win for Edmonton. Philip Larson for a 5th. Now, Larson didn't do a whole hell of a lot in Vancouver. What did that 5th-round pick become? Michael, you're not a real person. I could have gone the rest of my life without seeing that picture of Michael Carell. Anyway, that's a draw. Justin Schultz for a 3rd. Jesus Christ. It's like, nothing trade. Major loss. Nothing trade, major loss. That pick was Philip Berglund. So, major loss, decent win, draw, win, draw, major loss. Thank God there's only one more page. This is painful, and I'm not even an Oilers fan. Teddy Purcell for a 3rd. I will at least double check what that 3rd-round pick became, if not just for Deej's sake, so that he knows what they gave up for Teddy Purcell. Matthew Cairns. That's a nothing trade, but I'm going to give the win to Florida because they at least have an NHLer out of the deal. Anders Nilsson for Nicholas Lundstrom and a 5th. I want to know what that 5th-round pick became. But I think they won the deal on Nilsson, and then when they dealt him, the deal to get them, they won. After that, they lost. They got Graham McPhee. So, yeah. So they won the deal to acquire him and lost the deal when they dealt him. Peter Chiarelli, ladies and gentlemen. Patrick Maroon for Martin Gernat in a 4th. I do need to, at the very least, see what that 4th-round pick was. I got to know. That was Jack Kopacka. That's a win. God, just win for Chiarelli, clearly. Nel Yakupov for Zach Pachiro and a 3rd. Did that 3rd-round pick ever become anything? I need to know. Did that 3rd-round pick ever become anything? Cameron Crotty, who is a Arizona prospect. So that pick was dealt later on. It's a draw. Can you imagine in 2012 saying the Blues are going to get Nail Yakupov for Zach Pachiro and a current NCAA defenseman, and you're going to be like, it's a draw. Henrik Samuelsson for Mitch Moroz, draw. David Desharnais for Brandon Davidson. That's who I was thinking of earlier, by the way. I confused Brandon Davidson and Brandon Manning. That's a draw. I can't say one team won one way or the other. Justin Fontaine for Taylor Beck. Another nothing trade. The Chiarelli staple. Jesus Christ. It's so bad. How does he still have a job? Holy hell. Mike Camilleri for UC Oakenden. That's a draw. Craig Chase for future considerations. That's a draw. Al Montoya for a 4th. What did Montreal get with that 4th round pick this year? I do wonder. It's not updated. Huh. Well done. 2018 NHL draft. Let's take a look. There was a 4th, right? Yeah, conditional 4th. Did they even get it? Montreal, is there one via Edmonton? They dealt it to San Jose, and it became Jasper Weatherby, who's a real person, allegedly. So that happened. We'll still call it a win for Edmonton. Montoya, for now at least. Brandon Davidson for a 3rd. I'm going to call that a win preemptively, but who the hell knows? It's probably going to be a draw. Mark Letestu for Pontus Aberg. It's a draw. Probably a win for Nashville. Patrick Maroon for J.D. Dudek in a 3rd. We need to see what that 3rd round pick becomes, but considering Maroon's not in New Jersey, I'm not going to call it a win for the Devils. It's probably a draw or a win for the Oilers in due time. Cooper Marotti for a 3rd. We need to find out what that 3rd's going to become, so right now it's a draw. Nolan Vesey for a 7th. It's a draw. Probably going to end up being a win for Toronto. Jarabek for a 6th. It's a draw for now. Ryan Spooner for Ryan Strome. That is a loss, ladies and gentlemen, considering the word was, Chiarelli tried to trade Ryan Spooner today, the same day that he made these 2 trades, and he couldn't find a buyer. That's a loss already. And Chris Weidman for a 6th round pick. And then Chris Weidman and a 3rd to Florida. I was in a good mood before this. Now I'm just depressed. I mean, as a Bruins fan, you see a lot of those trades. It's like, yeah, okay, but at least we won, right? So, trust me, a Stanley Cup win can make you forgive a lot of things, even trading Tyler Seguin and Blake Wheeler and Dougie Hamilton, which granted was after his tenure. Edmonton, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.